And there we go. We are back. Who would have thought 3 episodes, gentlemen? Welcome back to the Circus of Safety. How are we this morning?
Very good, thank you.
Fantastic.
Very
Andy,
good.
what about yourself, mate?
Yeah, very good. A bit cold, but very good.
But cool, very good. Now we just got to. We're not going well here. Des is the only one seeming to be able to kind of hold the team here. Andy and I seem to both be struggling with IT issues. We've managed to get audio, but we can't seem to get visual. So thank you, Des, the only sensible one in this group. So really appreciate that. Hey guys, how about we just get into it, eh? We've obviously been, well, if you've been watching the Circus of Safety LinkedIn page, you'll notice that we've been dropping hints. I know it's hard to believe, but we've got a special guest that's agreed to join us, so quite exciting. But before we get to our special guest, how about we go spin the wheel? Does that sound like a plan?
Spin
Sounds
away.
good.
Spin away. Okay, so let's bring the wheel up. There we go. Can we all see the spinning wheel?
Absolutely.
Fantastic, and away we go. Hey! Hey. Who would have thought? Professional registration. I don't quite know what's gone on here. It may appear that somebody's jimmied the spinning wheel of death. Can't believe that's the case, but it looks like on today's show, Des is dumbfounded that somebody would have compromised the spinning wheel of death.
The whole integrity of the show is compromised now, Brenton.
Sorry, Des, I forgot. Mate, listen, before we get into it and we compromise not only the integrity of the show, but the integrity of our professionalism, do you just want to run us through the legal jargon that we've got to run through at the start of each show?
A little disclaimer waiver.
Yeah,
so nothing in this show constitutes legal advice or any sort of advice for that matter, and shouldn't be acted upon without seeking professional advice. And on that basis, probably shouldn't be listened to by anyone.
Mate, we spoke about this, mate. We're supposed to be growing the audience, not telling people not to listen. Really hard to find good help these days. I guess you get what you pay for, right? Hey, so we're going to be talking today about professional registration, and if you've been watching the page over the week, we've got a special guest, and before we reveal our special guest, just a bit about this special guest. This special guest comes to us with over 20 years of experience in risk management and safety, and they're by all means making the world a much safer place. They happen to also be a professional managing director, I believe, of a professional services consultancy in the past, and they've also been reaching out to on not only working locally but working globally, which is pretty exciting. Who would have thought we could have attracted such talent? This individual has also held independent governance roles in very notable organizations such as the Department of Corrections. As a fellow of certain organizations, they have educated students on crucial topics like risk management and health and safety principles. Our mystery expert has also chaired an advisory panel with representatives from top companies and academia. In fact, I don't know if we actually want the special guest on the show because they're making us look like idiots. They've also played significant roles in search and rescue initiatives, advising multiple members of strategic committees, and has also been an inspector for regulators, as well as leading an international consultancy. I mean, wow, with a skill set like that, this show is definitely going to be lifting in professionalism. So without further ado, gentlemen, can we get a drum roll from someone? Okay. There we go, from me. And welcome to the show, Helen Sadgrove. How are you, Helen?
I am good, thank you. Good morning.
Thank you for coming in. I appreciate there was a bit of bribery and corruption that led to this meeting. And where about in the world are you at the moment,
I'm
Helen?
in sunny Dunedin today, and I've got to admit I have not been professional this morning. I've been travelling the last 2 days, and so I've had toothpaste in my makeup bag, and I went to put my eye makeup on this morning, and there was toothpaste on my eye brush, so I smeared my eye with toothpaste. So I am now very
Oh.
alert and minty fresh.
Oh wow! Wow, minty fresh. That's definitely something that we're not normally on the show. So thank you for bringing in a bit of freshness to the show. Greatly appreciate that. Now, I've had toothpaste in my eyes before, Helen, and normally I end up kind of crying. But you seem to be very composed. Yeah.
Professionalism.
Any
It's a professionalism, Brenton.
professionalism? Well, that's very. I like the way you've led into this because professionalism is a little bit about what we're going to be talking about today. We on the spinning wheel of death. I know this is hard to believe, but professional registration was the topic that's popped up on the spinning wheel of death this morning.
Shocking.
It's absolutely shocking. Somebody would have. It appears that somebody's maybe jimmied the spinning wheel of death. But now the reason we've got you on the show, Helen, and I'm just trying to play with the technology. I seem to be having a mare today. Is you recently put up a LinkedIn post regarding professional registration, which I unfortunately can't seem to share at the moment. But it was along the lines of I guess. Do you want to just walk us through that LinkedIn post? It's probably the best way to maybe kind of start the show.
Sure, it was more of a rant really than a post. It was like the equivalent of a drunk text, which perhaps on reflection I may not have posted if I'd thought it through. But it's out there now.
Oh, no, sorry. Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Not that as Des told everyone to stop watching, there's probably nobody actually watching the show right now. Were you drinking at the time?
No, I was not drinking at the time, although it does appear so
Just
when you
to
read
clear
it.
that up. Sorry, carry on as you were.
So I was updating my HASANZ registration, which I've been a member of HASANZ for a few years because I supported it at the beginning, and I was updating it and then had to re-upload some certificates and evidence for things that I would consider to be core competence for a health and safety person. So I threw my toys because I got so frustrated with the bureaucracy, and that was it. I had enough. What I was really surprised about is putting that post on how many people resonated with it and how many public messages and private ones that I've had that have said, actually, we feel frustrated with this process too.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Funny you bring that up. Like I did a bit of research. Like I've really lifted my professionalism for episode 3 of the Circus of Safety. So thank you for doing that for us. I actually did a bit of research, Helen, because, I guess there's a couple of things I just want to touch on. Firstly, I believe we may even have an international audience, which is pretty exciting. Now, not everyone may know what HASANZ actually is. So HASANZ in New Zealand is, I guess, it's our professional registration body, right? And they are, how would we describe them? They're the peak body for health and safety organisations in New Zealand, is how they describe themselves. They're probably their primary notoriety is around the HASANZ register, which is what kind of started your rant as you've described it. And surprisingly, well, not surprisingly, but I don't know if people aren't aware, they've actually now, I saw a post that they put on LinkedIn. They've been going for 5 years. 5 years. Now, interestingly, though, I did some I'm not known for my maths, and that's why we've got Des here, because Des is the smart one.
Thanks.
And maybe intellectual. Smart. Anyway. Fascinating though, Helen. I noticed I did a bit of stalking of you on LinkedIn, and all I could find is that you got 500 plus connections. Yet the HASANZ LinkedIn page has 3,370 followers. So just about I don't know how many more than 500 you've got, but interestingly enough, they only had 20 odd reactions to their "hey, we've turned 5" kind of thing, and 2 comments on their post recently about their turning 5. Your post, however, Helen, 57 reactions and 57 comments. about your little rant. I mean, that's pretty. That's more than the show gets. Really, that's awesome.
About 8,000 people looked at it, which I found strange.
What that people, but like you said though, I mean, I read through a number of these comments, and a lot of them, like you said, were resonating with what you're saying. And I think just before we get into the panel discussion about this, we've just got to make it clear we're not ranting about HASANZ itself. It's more the process that you had to go through for re-registration is where we're kind of going at. So kind of just wanted to sort of get into there. So let's firstly, in case we lose him, Andy, any thoughts on HASANZ and the registration process?
Just my understanding is that the HASANZ is actually the Association of Associations, and that you don't actually join HASANZ, you join an association that's a member of HASANZ. Is that would that be correct?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like you say, it's Association of Associations, so it runs a register and professional bodies join it. And then by virtue of being a member of a professional body, you can get on the register.
So I'm guessing in that respect, there's some alignment between the different professional bodies that are linked to HASANZ. So their core values would be similar between the different associations. Would that be fair to say?
I mean, everyone's working towards a broad health and safety kind of goal, I suppose, and supporting industry and business. Yeah, I think there's probably lots of different contextual differences between all of the different disciplines, but I think HASANZ is a kind of one voice, big advocacy, easier to deal with for government, all of that stuff. I think it makes sense, like that. I think that makes perfect sense. But I think this running of the register it's the only bit I have any issue with, and it's just the bureaucracy of it, which I'm sure we will get into. I mean, is anyone else on it here? Brenton, Andy, Desai, are you on it? Have you got any?
No.
Yeah,
No.
I went through the process earlier this year. I think it was either late last year or earlier this year.
Nice. And any specialisms?
I have to check my memory there. I think it's incident investigations, governance, due diligence. There were several others. I just can't remember, but I think I'm on there as a generalist.
Nice.
Yeah, fascinating. You bring that up, Helen. Specialisms. Fascinated by that term, firstly, and secondly, fascinated by the process you go to become a specialist, really. And one of the examples that I use, and I'd be interested to get everyone's thoughts on, is I've spent 18 years of my life in the outdoor education sector, right? And it was interesting when I jumped on the HASANZ register to have a look and filter. You can filter. One of the topics is, I can't remember the exact terminology, but it's to do with outdoor education and tourism. The number of people that have specialisms in outdoor education and tourism is phenomenal. And what was even more phenomenal, as somebody that spent 18 years working in that industry, I'd never met any of them. So, I mean, what are you going to do to be a specialism? You just got to tick a box? I mean, like I'm sorry, but that just blew my mind. 18 years in an industry, and I had not heard or met of any of the people on the HASANZ register that had that as a specialism.
Interesting. I mean, I just have a fundamental belief. So I did environmental health as my kind of degree. So if you have a trade, environmental health would be mine. It's a vocational master's over 2 years. You do a bit of theory in university, you go and sit in a council with someone watching you, you do a portfolio, you go through your degree. At the end of that, you have to do a professional portfolio. At the end of all of that, you do professional exams, and then you can register with what was the Environmental Health Officers Registration Board, and that gave you almost the license to practice, and you had to do CPD to maintain that. So my belief is that you would have the same kind of process for health and safety, right? You have a general set of core competencies, putting aside the issues with defining what those are and developing courses that have any standardization or consistency. Leave that because that's a huge topic for now. But you would go through a course that would be recognized by a professional body. You would be approved. You demonstrate some commitment like you do through a professional portfolio, and then you would become a professional member. if you're a professional member, you would be expected to do certain things like risk assessment, accident investigation, that kind of stuff. Whether you want to do those things is separate, but you should be able to do them because you're a member of the professional body. They've tested that. So then to get on a register, why would you then have to provide additional evidence to prove that you can do risk assessment and investigation? Because surely your professional body has already verified that. Isn't this duplication? And I think in New Zealand, at the level of maturity that we are at the moment, why are we over-engineering something? Do we really think that business is either not able to find a person without this register, or they're so detail-focused that they're specifically going to search for one specific issue on the register, like risk assessment, not just, I want some health and safety advice that anybody will do, and hopefully they point me in the right direction. Why can't we just have registration, which is generalists, like hygienists, and then as you talk to them, they tell you what they can and can't do.
Any thoughts on that, Des? You want to take that any further?
I agree that it's bureaucratic and repetitive. It's if you've been through the certified professional pathway with NZISM, you just repeat that again for HASANZ. Which, to be honest, I think that if you're a competent and able practitioner, both of those things should be relatively easy, just a little bit time consuming. I think professional registration is a necessary evil for any professional body. And I also don't think it's for us. It's for our clients. And it's in the absence of a professional body and professional registration, they don't have anything to measure us with. However, I've said this to both Andy and Brent before, I don't think it carries any weight until we start talking about deregistration of practitioners.
Yep, absolutely.
Absolutely.
That's when it starts to mean something.
And that's what I wanted to talk about, was if it's an association of associations, who removes you for malpractice? Because would that mean that HASANZ would have to remove the whole of NZISM? Or is it down to NZISM to revoke the membership of an individual who's on the register? And that's one thing that I've never really understood. And it's a question that's come up a few times with the diploma students that I teach. In Block 8, we talk about continued professional development. And I've always found this quite an interesting topic for us to discuss. Has anyone got any insights into that aspect of it?
Now, my thoughts are, you're a member of a professional body with a code of ethics, so they would be the ones that would investigate any malpractice. And if you are sanctioned by your professional body and you weren't a member of that professional body, or you were degraded to a different level, then that might impact your ability to go on the register in the first place. So I think there's that synergy there. I think maybe the disconnect is that HASANZ, rather than just running a register, is running also a duplication process where they say you can say that you can do all of these separate little things as well. I'm not sure that we need that at this stage. I also recognise that this is a body that needs funding, and at $115 per person and $2.5K in NZISM at the moment, if everyone was on it, that'd be about just under $300,000 a year, which is useful money for advocacy and all of that other stuff. So the register is definitely a revenue stream, but it doesn't need to be a bureaucratic revenue stream.
Yeah, so interesting. The thing that jumps out to me though, and Des sort of started touching on it, and I guess Andy's sort of going there as well a little bit, and maybe it's my naivety, but what is the difference between, as Des has mentioned, he's gone through his certified professional accreditation with NZISM, and I'm currently going through that. What is the difference between the two, really? And does that then put NZISM, for example, and HASANZ in competition with each other? And in a country this size, where we've only got, I don't know how many professionals in the business in this country, is that what we need right now as a professional body to drive us forward?
I don't think they're in competition with each other, because I think they do different things. So I think a professional body is a professional body, and like you said, it's important. Hey, it's important we've got professional standards. the question of whether those standards are set right is separate, but it's important we got them. We've got codes of ethics, it gives confidence to people. That's awesome. All HASANZ is a vehicle to bring a marketplace to business for all of those professional bodies. So it's just a way to showcase to business, these are all the people you could have come and help you or support you. So rather than going to each professional body, a business can go to this one portal and find all of the professionals that are on this register. So they're separate things. So HASANZ definitely doesn't have the same professional body standing as the NZISM would, or the OC Health nurses and stuff, I don't think. How about yourself, Desai? What do you reckon?
I always compare this to my last profession, which was a legal profession in Western Australia, and the way they were set up. They had the Law Society, which was the equivalent of NZISM, and they had the Legal Practice Board, which was not quite the equivalent of HASANZ, but basically you would expect it to be a member of the Law Society. You didn't have to be, but that's where you got your CPD from. And the Legal Practice Board would determine if you've met your ongoing obligations as a professional, and they would also deregister you. So they were two different functions.
Nice. I think that's probably similar, eh?
Yeah. I've got another question, which I just want to kind of throw out there. And I don't know, maybe Andy can jump on this to start the ball rolling. Because I guess part of the registration process, right, with either if we're going down the road of the HASANZ register and you've got to provide evidence of, I guess, competence, would that be a fair term? My question is, does providing evidence of competence twice make you twice as competent? Andy, any thoughts on that?
It possibly makes you twice as competent at providing evidence about your competency. But I'm not sure that it would. No, it doesn't. And I think this whole thing seems to be, there seems to be unnecessary complexity in this process. And again, for me, it goes back to which part of this is responsible for what. Because if we go back to how you get deregistered, if you've got to provide all this evidence to a body that you've already provided it to a body that's a member of the body that you're applying to be a member of the body of, if that makes sense, probably not. Then where does it? So you've met all your obligations to be on the HASANZ register, but yeah, say for whatever reason you've let something lapse with NZISM. I mean, where do you sit in that circumstance? Who's in charge? Who wears the big boy pants?
And let's be honest, it's NZISM who assess any evidence that you give to get on the HASANZ register.
Absolutely. So it to me, it just seems it's your rant, for want of a better expression, was entirely correct, and you raised some very valid points, and I think that's been approved by many people by the sheer number of comments you've got relating to that. I think it's very interesting. But isn't it a little bit ironic that part of our job is to encourage organisations to reduce bureaucracy and focus on what matters? Yet we've got two bodies here that seem to be not doing what we're trying to do.
Do you think that part of the reason that there's this additional, if you want to say that you're a specialist in risk management or in investigation, rather than that being seen as a core competence, do you think that that's relating to the complexity with the different courses that are available and the fact that there's not really any standardization about what's taught and what's core?
Absolutely. There's no agreement, and this is something that I rant and rave about regularly, is we haven't really got some clear definitions about what our subject is. And quite often we'll talk about safety, but no one can actually agree with what safety actually is and what it isn't. And until, as a professional body or group of people, we've got some very fundamental definitions of what we're actually trying to achieve, then everything's going to be very, very messy. And that's what I find with some of my clients when they engage different organizations to provide them with training and advice, is that it's often possibly not contradictory, but it doesn't support each other. So they'll put the supervisors on a supervisor course and the managers on a managing safety course, but they're both getting different messages. And that doesn't work in the organizational context. But you know this, Helen.
Yeah.
We spoke about this years ago.
but then again, sticking with I guess organisations for organisations, as you might know, I'm involved with InchPo, and again, very similar circumstance, right? This is an organisation, an international organisation that's bringing together, I guess, regional or local organisations from around the world. And you've got the qualifications framework. So in terms of trying to define, well, not define, but put those core competencies in there, there is a baseline if we wanted to follow such a baseline. So it's just, again, interesting. I guess everyone seems, we just got to make sure that we're not all trying to be in competition, with each other. And I think that's my worry, and that's where I see HASANZ and NZISM, for example, and the simplicity of it all. Is potentially almost, because again, you go to NZISM and there's a register of all the professionals, right? I mean, maybe that register could be tidied up around what does a certified professional mean versus a professional versus or whatever. You've got like I said, because our country is so small, the same people that are assessing you for your NZISM certification are the same people that are assessing you for your HASANZ. I mean, it just seems bonkers. And I just wish you could see my face.
Could you also make a case that the people that are doing your assessments are actually in competition with you?
Well, you could argue that, right? Because if you get on that register, and supposedly,
because
if you quote the register.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the reasons that Helen said that she was on the register. Oh, sorry. One of the reasons Helen mentioned she was on the register was because she could do Safe Plus assessments. So,
yep.
Yeah, and I believe that's quite lucrative. So, so you end up with a whole heap of people that are on this register that are actually competing against each other. And some of those people on the register are probably the people that are going to be doing the assessment themselves. So you end up assessing your competitors to get on the register.
Andy, Des has a question for you, mate.
Oh, no.
Isn't that going to be the case with any sort of professional registration?
I don't know.
I think so. When we've got a voluntary body doing it, for sure, because people donate their time, which is awesome, but at the same time, they're not paid to do it, and it's not a separate function, like a paramedics getting registered, and there's a board, and but there is legislation for those. But you know what I mean? It's very separate, like lawyers and stuff. Yeah, it's not as set up. We're getting better, but we're not there yet.
No, fantastic. Hey, listen, Helen, I'm just going to come back to you on this because that intro that I painstakingly researched and came up with prior to the show. You not only are you obviously got a vast amount of experience and work experience, practical experience in New Zealand, but you've also got that globally and internationally, which is really exciting. And not only are you a member of and on the HASANZ register, you're a member of NZISM and you're a member of IOSH. So I guess just really interested to understand your thoughts on how is what we're doing here in little old Aotearoa different to say what's happening abroad and say the UK. Be interesting to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. I mean, in terms of professional bodies, both the same, different scales, and there's an alignment between the two. So I think you can even kind of cross credit. You become a chartered member of IOSH, you can become a certified member of NZISM. They're sort of cross credited. IOSH has just been around a lot longer and it's a lot bigger. It's got head office in Leicester. It's got 70 odd staff, I think was the last time I realized they got that. They've got this whole new process that they've just launched that not everybody likes, called the blueprint. So you go through this really long questionnaire about different skills that you have to do, and you do this every year, and it's leadership, budget management, functional management, and some technical stuff. It gives you a scale of how good you are based on your answers, and then that informs what needs to go in your professional development plan. There's links to online learning, that kind of stuff. You have to do so many hours per year. That's audited by independent people. And there's videos that you have to watch. So I've just had to watch 3 ethics videos. So really comprehensive. So it's not just the fact that you learn about investigation or whatever, and then that's it, never have to do it again. You constantly have to maintain that to stay on the register. In fact, if you don't do the 3 videos, they downgrade whatever level you are back to affiliate. So you constantly have to engage with your professional body to maintain that. NZISM, I think, is getting there, but there's there's still a wee way to go. We just don't have the infrastructure and the resources here to move as fast as IOSH do. I think the difference, Paul's asked a question about where IOSH sits, and the difference is that IOSH is not a member of HASANZ. It's an external body, and they would never probably, I can't speak for them, but want to compete with an in-country professional body. So it doesn't count is the answer over here. Means nothing.
And oh yeah, great reminder. It's really cool. Hey Paul, big friend of the show. Great to see you online and engaging in the comments, and obviously Helen's far more technically savvy than those of us running the show. So great to see. Thanks for answering that question, Helen. I guess I'm also interested to understand in the UK, for example, which people may or may not appreciate that you've got some connection with. Where is the do they have the same thing, as in like they've got obviously got IOSH? Do they have a HASANZ in the UK that you're aware of?
I shall ignore that accent dig, Mr. Harrison.
It was nothing more than a compliment.
They used to have a register called the Oscar Register, and it was run by a tax company or an insurance company at one point. I'm not sure whether it still exists or not, but it was very similar in some ways and very different in others. So it wasn't an association of associations. It's way more powerful over here, way more valuable. But from just the register perspective, all you had to do was be a member of IOSH and demonstrate you got insurance and you went on the register. Similar concept though, really, that people could search that register and find a person that was registered. But IOSH is so well known over there that if you want health and safety advice, you'd go to IOSH.
Yeah, I guess that raises a valid point. You know, in a country as small as we are, where our resource is quite limited, to me it makes more sense that these organisations such as HASANZ and NZISM maybe need to really reconsider their position in the market, for want of a better word, and work more collaboratively to get more clout and more bang for their buck, right? Because if you're a large country with loads of resource, that's a different field to what you're playing in, right? And I guess that's my worry with HASANZ is it trying to be something else, a professional body for professional bodies, yet it's maintaining a register of individuals, which again seems different to what its core business is. If you're a professional body for professional bodies, I would have thought that your purpose is to support and help those professional bodies, you know, lift the level of professionalism or promote that, not necessarily then deal with individuals. So some interesting stuff there. Hey Des, as we start coming to an end, I know we've unfortunately lost Andy due to technical problems. Again, great level of professionalism here on the Circus of Safety. I guess maybe the name is more apt than we realised. I just want to wrap up any thoughts you've got before we start wrapping up the show.
Yeah. See, I've gone all out with my memberships. I joined IOSH earlier this year. I haven't yet completed Blueprint, but I wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was mutual recognition between NZISM and IOSH, which I believe is currently under review or may have just been recently reviewed. I'm not sure if that's ongoing, but I haven't had a crack at Blueprint yet. But I'm also a member of the Australian Institute of Health and Safety, and there's elements of each one that are excellent. For instance, the Australian Institute of Health and Safety have one of the best ethics training courses or modules that you can complete as part of your CPD. And they require everyone to do that if you want to progress through their memberships. And I think that's something that a professional body can do really well. And I haven't seen any of them do it well so far. And again, I compare that to the legal profession, where you have genuine ethical dilemmas where, you know, you might be representing someone who's confessed a crime to you. Is your duty to represent them, or is it your duty to the court and to society as a whole? You know, what do you do with that information? That's a genuine ethical dilemma, and you need an answer to that. We don't have that in safety. A lot of the ethics training and courses that we do centers around just acting professionally and being honest and working with integrity, which, yeah, that's great, but what do I actually do when I'm being asked to risk assess something with a predetermined outcome, for instance, or I'm forced to do an investigation and apply just culture where I don't want to apply just culture, but that's the company policy. There's a plethora of different things that need answers, and none of them quite have that yet. So I think there's a lot of work to be done for a professional body, for a profession that's in its infancy. But I'm not. I think we've taken some pretty big strides in New Zealand, and I'm pretty happy to be a part of NZISM and HASANZ. They're not perfect, but they're definitely heading in the right direction.
No, great, Des, we appreciate that, and yeah, and I think that just sums up the whole thing. You know, we're not saying that one's better than the other. We're definitely not saying that one, you know, that there's anything wrong with either of them. It's just around making sure that there's efficiencies, right, and that we can continue to move forward. Any further thoughts, Helen, to wrap up your segment? I mean, firstly, thank you for coming along. How did you find the experience? And yeah, any kind of final thoughts on this whole HASANZ registration process?
Thanks for having me. It's been fun. I think my final thoughts are to echo Desai. Absolutely, fully support HASANZ. Always have, and you know, I like the concept, but I just worry that we are over-engineering a solution to a problem that we're not necessarily sure isn't a symptom of other problems. If business need access to health and safety advice, then is the bureaucracy that sits around the ability to get on that register currently a barrier to people going on the register and therefore giving people that advice? So if we over-engineered a solution to a problem is my only concern, but fully support HASANZ and will always be a member of a professional body while I work in safety. Until I set up a bakery in some far-flung country, I will maintain that professional standard. So thanks for having me on. It's been nice to see Desai and to hear from you, Brenton.
No worries, and listen, really appreciate you coming on. I know we're in our infancy here on the Circus of Safety videocast, and probably took a lot of courage to put yourself out there on such a highly unprofessional, disjointed, disorganized show, really. So really appreciate you coming along and lifting that level of professionalism for us, and making us do actual research before we went live. So thank you for that. And for me to wrap up, I mean, I will be posting my reflections next week on the call once I've had time to reflect and digest, and that's going to be on my our little Patreon account that we've got running. If you want to support the show. Now, I'm still a little bit confused, to be honest. Doesn't take much to confuse me, but I am a little bit still confused around where these two organisations sit in the current landscape of New Zealand health and safety. I agree. I think they're both trying to do really good work, and I don't disagree with that one little bit. I think maybe some greater work and clarity around positions in the marketplace, positions in the landscape, and how they can better work together to remove bureaucracy and support the profession growing, but also support those, like you said, looking for professionals to support them in that mix. So, yeah, it's been an absolute blast. I hope everyone out there, thank you to Paul Shaw, again, going hard on the LinkedIn chat. Really appreciate that. We might have to delete some of those comments. I don't know how appropriate they are. Really appreciate those hundreds of viewers tuning in, and yeah, look forward to seeing you on the Safety Circus. Hopefully you'll get to see me actually in the next couple of weeks. So until then, take care, and we'll talk soon.